Man of the West was not just another Gary Cooper Western. It was a deathbed confession filmed in real time, a movie so bleak and brutal it nearly killed its iconic star. What audiences saw as a standard tale of redemption was actually the raw, unvarnished portrait of a man dying, a director pushing his actors to the brink, and a studio so horrified they tried to bury it. Behind the scenes of this dark masterpiece, a different kind of violence erupted, one with a star's terminal illness, a director's sadistic methods, a leading lady's on-set misery, and a final product so far ahead of its time, it was initially branded as sadistic trash. These are not just production notes, they are the battle scars from the making of a film that dared to rip the mask off the American West. Today, we are riding into the heart of darkness with 20 weird facts about Man of the West. And stay tuned to the end for a bonus fact about the film's shooting schedule that is so shocking. It will change how you see every single frame of Gary Cooper's performance. Hit that subscribe button and let's uncover the secrets of Hollywood's most brutal Western. Number 20. Gary Cooper was literally dying of cancer during filming. The most shocking truth about Man of the West is that its star, Gary Cooper, was suffering from terminal prostate cancer throughout the entire production. What audiences did not know was that Cooper was in constant, excruciating pain, a fact he hid from everyone but his wife and director Anthony Mann. It was not just a performance, it was a man confronting his own mortality on camera. Cooper's gaunt frame, his labored breathing, and the visible weariness in his eyes were not acting. It was the reality of a body shutting down. This was not just a role, it was a final, heroic stand. The physicality you see on screen, the struggle to simply mount a horse or walk across a room, is the authentic document of a Hollywood legend's final months. The film is not just a Western, it is Cooper's own elegy, filmed in the shadow of the grave. Number 19. Director Anthony Mann was accused of sadism for pushing Cooper. Anthony Mann was not just a demanding director, he was a man accused of exploiting his star's illness for the sake of authenticity. What audiences did not know was that Mann, knowing Cooper was dying, pushed him to perform grueling stunts and endure long, punishing days in the desert sun. It was not just filmmaking, it was psychological and physical torment. Crew members whispered that Mann was a sadist, deliberately capturing Cooper's real-life agony to fuel the film's dark power. When Cooper would collapse from exhaustion, Mann would reportedly yell, "Perfect, let's get another take." This was not just a director pushing for a performance, it was a battle of wills where the director's ambition may have crossed the line into cruelty. The film's brutal intensity is forever tainted by the question of whether it was art or exploitation. Number 18. The film's barren location was a hell on earth for the ailing star. The film's stark, beautiful, but unforgiving landscape was not just a backdrop, it was an antagonist. Shot on the sun-baked plains of Thousand Oaks, California, the location offered no respite from the oppressive heat. What audiences did not know was that this environment was a special kind of hell for Gary Cooper. His cancer made him extremely sensitive to temperature, and the relentless heat exacerbated his pain and fatigue. It was not just a location shoot, it was a crucible. While other actors could retreat to shade or air-conditioned trailers, Cooper, ever the professional, often remained in costume, waiting in the sun. The landscape's withered, unforgiving nature became a metaphor for his own body's betrayal, a visual poetry born from genuine suffering. The desert did not just frame the film, it nearly consumed its star. Number 17, Julie London felt like a human prop and hated the experience. Julie London, the sultry-voiced singer and actress, played Cooper's love interest, Billie Ellis. But behind the scenes, she was miserable. What audiences did not know was that London felt completely sidelined and used, describing her role as little more than a human prop in a story about men. It was not just a small part, it was a demeaning experience. She had little interaction with Cooper off-screen, as his illness kept him isolated, and director Mann focused almost exclusively on the male dynamics of violence and redemption. London later confessed she felt her character was an afterthought, a reward for the hero's journey rather than a fully realized person. This was not just a performance, it was an actress marking time in a film that had little use for her beyond her visual appeal, a fact that made her on-set experience deeply unsatisfying. Number 16. The film was brutally savaged by critics as sadistic. Upon its release, Man of the West was not just panned, it was reviled. Critics in 1958 were not prepared for its unflinching violence and its bleak, pessimistic worldview. What audiences did not know was that the film was labeled sadistic, ugly, and a mean-spirited exercise in brutality. It was not just a bad review, it was a moral condemnation. The infamous scene where Link Jones's old gang taunts and psychologically tortures a family was seen as gratuitously cruel. Not as a commentary on the inherent violence of the West. The film's refusal to offer easy comfort or a clean, heroic resolution left critics feeling assaulted. This was not just a critical failure, it was a complete rejection of the film's artistic vision, a rejection that would haunt its reputation for decades. Number 15. The film's most shocking scene is a thinly veiled rape. One of the most disturbing moments in the film is when the outlaws, led by Doc Tobin, Lee J. Cobb, terrorize a homesteading family. While the film is careful with its 1958 censorship constraints, the subtext of the scene is a brutal gang rape in waiting. What audiences did not know was how shocking this implication was for the time. The scene does not show the act, but it lingers on the psychological terror of the women and the powerlessness of the husband. It was not just a threat, it was a masterclass in suspense and subtext. The men's leering, sadistic glee and the family's frozen horror create a moment of unbearable tension. This was not just a villainous act, it was Anthony Mann pushing the Hays Code to its absolute limit, forcing the audience to imagine a horror far worse than anything he could show on screen. Number 14. Lee J. Cobb's method intensity terrified the cast. As the patriarch of the villainous Tobin family, Lee J. Cobb delivered a performance of terrifying realism. What audiences did not know was that Cobb, a famed stage actor steeped in the method, stayed in character between takes, and his intensity was genuinely frightening. It was not just a performance, it was a psychological siege. The other actors, especially the women playing the homesteading family, were genuinely afraid of him during the filming of the cabin scene. Cobb's eyes, his voice, his menacing presence were so convincing that the line between actor and monster completely dissolved. This was not just good acting, it was a form of on-set torment that created the scene's unbearable authenticity. The fear you see on the other actors' faces is not entirely acting. It is a real reaction to a man who had become the embodiment of sadistic evil. Number 13. The film was a prestige picture that became a box office disaster. Man of the West was not a cheap B-Western. It was a high-budget prestige picture from Columbia, designed to be a major awards contender. What audiences did not know was that the film's bleak tone and poor reviews completely poisoned its box office prospects. It was not just a flop, it was a financial disaster. Audiences expecting a heroic Gary Cooper Western were instead subjected to a dark, challenging character study that offered no easy catharsis. Word of mouth was brutal, with audiences feeling misled and depressed. The film's failure was a significant blow to Columbia and marked a turning point, signaling that the traditional heroic Western was on its last legs. This was not just a commercial misfire, it was a cultural moment where the old Hollywood myths began to die at the box office. Number 12. The town of Cross Creek was a deliberately artificial nightmare. The film's central location, the town of Cross Creek, is not a realistic Western town. It is a grotesque, almost expressionistic nightmare, built on a soundstage. What audiences did not know was that this was a deliberate artistic choice by Anthony Mann and production designer Robert Peterson. It was not just a set, it was a psychological landscape. The buildings are skewed, the streets are unnaturally empty, and the entire town feels like a purgatory between civilization and savagery. Mann wanted a space that reflected the twisted morality of its inhabitants. This was not just a backdrop, it was a visual manifestation of the film's themes. The artificiality of the set makes the human drama feel even more real and heightened, a brilliant choice that contributes to the film's unsettling, dreamlike quality. Number 11. The film completely betrayed Gary Cooper's heroic image. For decades, Gary Cooper was the embodiment of American heroism, the strong, silent, morally upright pillar of decency. Man of the West systematically dismantles that image. What audiences did not know was that Cooper's character, Link Jones, is a man defined by his past as a killer, a man who has to relearn how to be human. It was not just a different role, it was a deconstruction of a legend. Cooper is not charming or instantly likable. He is awkward, ashamed, and haunted. The film forces its star, and by extension his audience, to confront the idea that a hero is not born, but painfully remade through violence and regret. This was not just a character arc, it was a cinematic act of patricide, with Cooper killing his own iconic persona to create something far more complex and human. Number 10. The film's re-evaluation was led by French critics. Go ahead and like and subscribe because the story of how this reviled film became a masterpiece is a legend of film criticism. And it is what separates the casual movie watcher from the true cinephile. While American critics and audiences rejected Man of the West, it was championed almost immediately by French critics, particularly those at the influential magazine Cahiers du Cinéma. What audiences did not know was that these future New Wave directors like François Truffaut and Jean-Luc Godard saw the film not as sadistic, but as a profound deconstruction of the American myth. They were not just reviewing a movie, they were anointing a masterpiece. They praised Anthony Mann's malignant genius and Cooper's agonized performance. Their passionate defense created a new critical lens through which the film was eventually re-evaluated in America, transforming it from a box office poison into one of the greatest westerns ever made. Number 9. The final shot is one of the most ambiguous in Western history. The film ends not with a shootout, but with Link Jones and Billy Ellis simply walking away from the ruins, their future completely uncertain. What audiences did not know was that this ending was a radical rejection of the entire Western genre. It was not just a conclusion, it was a question mark. There is no ride into the sunset, no promise of a new life. There is only the quiet, weary aftermath of violence. Link has reclaimed his humanity, but the cost is immense and the future is a terrifying unknown. This was not just a downbeat ending, it was a statement that violence, even when justified, leaves a permanent scar. The final image of the two figures walking away is a haunting, poetic rejection of the simple, heroic resolutions that had defined the genre for decades. Number 8. Cooper and cinematographer Ernest Haller created a withered look. To visually represent Cooper's declining health and the film's bleak themes, Cooper and cinematographer Ernest Haller developed a unique visual strategy. What audiences did not know was that they used harsh top lighting and specific filters to emphasize the gauntness of Cooper's features and the deep lines on his face. It was not just lighting, it was a visual diagnosis. Haller would often position Cooper in harsh, direct sunlight, effectively burning out any softness and leaving only the stark, weathered reality of his condition. This was not just a standard glamour shot, it was a deliberate anti-glamour approach. The camera does not hide Cooper's illness, it stares at it, making his physical state a central part of the film's visual storytelling. This collaboration created one of the most raw and honest portraits of a movie star ever captured on film. Number 7. The film is a direct ancestor of Unforgiven. Decades before Clint Eastwood made his own deconstructionist western, he was studying the work of Anthony Mann. What audiences did not know was that Man of the West is a direct and acknowledged influence on Eastwood's masterpiece, Unforgiven. It was not just an inspiration, it was a blueprint. Both films deal with aging killers trying to escape their past. Both feature a protagonist who is physically and emotionally weary, and both conclude with the idea that violence, once unleashed, has a terrible, corrupting cost. Eastwood's William Money is a direct descendant of Cooper's Link Jones, a man who thought he was done with killing, only to be dragged back into the bloody muck. This is not just a similarity, it is a direct line of cinematic DNA, with Man of the West laying the groundwork for the modern, revisionist Western. Number 6. The script was written by Reginald Rose, master of moral ambiguity. The film's intelligent, morally complex screenplay was penned by Reginald Rose, the television writer famous for creating 12 Angry Men. What audiences did not know was that Rose brought his signature brand of moral ambiguity and psychological tension to the Western genre. It was not just a script, it was a stage play on horseback. The dialogue is sparse but loaded with subtext, and the film's most intense moments are often silent confrontations. Much like a jury room drama, Rose's script treats violence not as heroic action, but as a moral failure, a sickness that infects men. This was not just a Western script, it was a character study disguised as a genre piece, elevating the material beyond simple good versus evil tropes into something far more unsettling and profound. Number 5. The casting of John Dehner was a deliberate subversion. The role of Cole, the gentleman gunslinger who serves as Link's first major test, was played by John Dehner. What audiences did not know was that this was a brilliant subversion of the typical fastest gun in the West trope. Dehner's character is not a snarling villain. He is a soft-spoken, almost philosophical killer who treats his profession like a craft. It was not just a villain, it was a dark mirror for Link. Dehner's polite, almost apologetic demeanor as he prepares to kill Link is far more chilling than any standard movie badman. His performance suggests that the true evil is not in the violence itself, but in the casual, professional way it is carried out. This was not just a casting choice, it was a sophisticated commentary on the banality of evil. Number 4. The film's score uses discordant sounds to create unease. Composer Lee Harlene's score for Man of the West is not the sweeping, romantic music of a traditional Western. It is a sparse, often discordant, and unsettling score that actively works against the on-screen imagery. What audiences did not know was that Harlene used unconventional instruments and jarring harmonies to create a constant state of psychological tension. It was not just background music, it was an audio representation of the film's twisted morality. During moments of potential heroism, the score might introduce a minor key or a harsh brass stab, preventing the audience from feeling comfortable. This was not just a musical choice, it was a form of emotional sabotage, ensuring the viewer never settles into the familiar rhythms of a Western, keeping them off balance and anxious just like the characters. Number 3, the film was made at the twilight of the classic Western era. Man of the West arrived at a pivotal moment. The classic studio Western, the genre that had defined American cinema for decades, was on its last legs. What audiences did not know was that the film was part of a wave of darker, more psychological Westerns, including The Searchers and 3:10 to Yuma, that were actively questioning and deconstructing the myths the genre had built. It was not just a movie, it was an autopsy. The old, simple tales of white hats and black hats were dying, and in their place were stories of traumatized veterans, morally ambiguous heroes, and the brutal psychological cost of taming the land. Man of the West is one of the purest examples of this transition, a film that looks back at the entire genre with a sense of sorrow and regret. Number 2. Gary Cooper saw Link Jones as his own dark mirror. Gary Cooper was not just playing a part, he was, by his own admission, confronting a darker version of himself. What audiences did not know was that Cooper saw Link Jones's journey from outlaw to schoolteacher as a metaphor for his own life. He had built a career playing heroes, but he was a man who, like all of us, had his own share of regrets and moral compromises. It was not just a character, it was a confession. Cooper stated in interviews that he was drawn to the role because Link was a man who had to actively fight his own violent nature, a struggle he understood intimately. This personal connection gives his performance an extra layer of heartbreaking authenticity. He is not just acting out a script, he is exercising his own demons on screen for the final time. Number 1. The film is now considered Cooper's truest, most complex performance. For decades, Cooper's Oscar-winning roles in Sergeant York and High Noon were considered his pinnacles. Today, many critics and filmmakers view his performance in Man of the West as his absolute masterpiece. What audiences did not know was that this shift in reputation is a testament to the film's power. It was not just a good performance, it was a revelation. Stripped of all his heroic tics and movie star charm, Cooper delivers a performance of raw, painful vulnerability. He is not the stoic hero, he is a broken man trying to piece himself together. The film's initial failure meant this performance was overlooked for years, but its reevaluation has rightfully placed it among the greatest lead performances in cinema history. It is the work of a man at the end of his life with nothing left to lose, creating a portrait of a hero that is infinitely more human and profound than any that came before it. Bonus fact, the film was shot in sequence to accommodate Cooper's declining health. In a highly unusual and costly move for a major studio production, Anthony Mann shot Man of the West almost entirely in sequence from start to finish. What audiences did not know was that this was done specifically to accommodate Gary Cooper's worsening health. It was not just a creative choice, it was a medical necessity. Mann and the crew knew that Cooper's energy and physical ability would only decrease as the shoot went on. By shooting the story in order, they could mirror Link Jones's physical and emotional journey with Cooper's own real-life decline. The early scenes where Link is more composed were filmed when Cooper was relatively stronger. The later, more desperate and violent scenes were filmed as Cooper became more gaunt and pained. This was not just a filmmaking technique, it was a perfect tragic fusion of actor and character, where the real-life decay of the star became the narrative arc of the film itself. Man of the West stands today not just as a great Western, but as a profound meditation on violence, mortality, and the difficult, painful process of redemption. It is a film that was born out of a star's real-life suffering and a director's uncompromising vision, a combination that proved too much for its initial audience to bear. What we see on screen is a raw, unflinching look at the dark heart of the American myth, a film that dares to suggest that the West was not one with heroism, but with brutality and its terrible, lingering aftermath. The film's legacy is its journey from reviled to revered. It is a testament to the idea that true art is often ahead of its time, and that the most challenging stories are the ones that force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our cultural icons. In a genre built on simple myths, Man of the West dared to tell a complex truth, and for that, it was punished before it was finally praised. The next time you watch Man of the West, remember the dying star, the sadistic director, and the studio that did not know what it had. Remember that you are watching not just a movie, but a man's final, brave confrontation with his own legend. Because in the West, as in life, the most important battles are the ones we fight with ourselves. Hit that notification bell and join us as we continue to explore the films that dare to show us the truth, no matter how brutal.